Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune. Spencer Forsythe is on the board, and we've got a lot to talk about with
Hold up, Brandon. First thing,
brought to you by Olipop.
well, I was also about to break. Did you reshape the facial hair a little bit?
Well, yeah, on accident. So I got a razor for Father's Day, and I got a 2 guard, which I thought that's what my barbers always use to trim it up. Big negative, Ghost Rider. So yes, it is having to grow back my
Yeah,
facial.
little bit of a new vibe with
Oh,
the
it's
it's
killing me, dude. Like I hate it. I hate it. I'm ready for the beard to come back.
Oh, well, yes, as Brandon mentioned, this installment of the OU Insider live YouTube stream series is brought to you by Olipop. We're proud to partner with them. Olipop is a relatively new addition to the soda scene, sweetened with a proprietary blend of 7 natural sweeteners. They've got 14 classic flavors and legitimate health benefits in every can. It's got all the sweetness and fizz and appetizing qualities of regular soda, but it's actually healthy. 9 grams of fiber in every single can, prebiotics to enhance digestive health, not to mention it's freaking delicious. If you haven't tried Olipop yet, I know a lot of our regulars have. Ronnie Crimson is a big vintage cola guy. I also am a big vintage cola guy. If you haven't checked out Olipop, grab one at your local Walmart, Whole Foods, Sprouts, or Target, or go online to drinkolipop.com and snag your first online order for 20% off using promo code ChampU20. And with that, Brandon, ChampU is kind of where we have to start. Biggest official visit weekend of the year for Oklahoma this past weekend, and it has already resulted in 2 commitments.
Yeah. So I guess do we start with that, or do we want to start with David Stone? Like what? How do we want to go
I
here? I
think
know off
Stone's
the air we
probably,
said David Stone,
yeah,
but
I think Stone's
we're
probably the
burying the
highest
lead if we don't
profile
talk about the
visitor.
commits, right?
Yeah, well, we can get around to Nesta and Ezekama, the little twofer that Oklahoma got last night. But I think let's start with Stone because you had the in-depth interview with him posted the YouTube channel earlier this week, a know ya crute, as we like to call it, in the style of Tom Haverford. So, I mean, let's start there. Obviously, no official visitor this past weekend is as significant to the Oklahoma class in theory as David Stone. So you're the one that knows that recruitment better than anybody. What's the general vibe coming out of the weekend with Stone?
Yeah, I mean, look, he showed up again in Norman yesterday to hang out with Jaden Jackson, the 4-star IMG Academy defensive tackle or nose tackle, whatever you want to call him. He's a big dude. And from what I gathered, is that look, and I texted David after he put out that tweet yesterday about, and I was like, dude, where's that coming from? He goes, I don't know. Everybody just assumes that I'm committed because I keep coming back to Norman. And I said, okay, well, that's fair, bro. But at the same time, he's like, I have got to take these visits. And he doesn't want to show up at Michigan State and just feel like everybody is on him and everybody's trying to pressure him into something and all that type of stuff. And like they're trying to flip him instead of just get him. And I can respect that. And I said, so if you feel pretty good about things, why are you taking all these visits? He said, because I don't know. And he said, number 2, I'm a man of my word. And if he said, if I can't follow through with what I said I'm going to do, then I'm not much of a man. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I can respect that too. So I get it. I get the fan side of things. I get David Stone's side of things. At the end of the day, he did say he's coming back to Oklahoma in July. Like said it on there, and he told me afterwards, I'm coming back in July. So you have to like it. And when you talk to people around Norman, they feel really good about things. And everybody wants to talk about NIL. Look, OU's going to take care of Stone. Like they're just going to. He is one of those recruitments that is a program changer. And I don't think that's overstating it. Do you, Parker? Like, I don't think that's overstating it.
No, and I made a guest appearance on a podcast earlier today, and I was asked just how important is David Stone for Oklahoma, all things considered. And I think when you take into account the pending move to the SEC, the lack of quality depth at that position on the roster as things stand, the fact that you pretty much struck out on top tier interior defensive line targets a year ago, and also that Stone is an in-state recruit, the highest ranked in-state recruit since Gerald McCoy back in the class of 2008, I want to say. This to me is the most important recruitment for the University of Oklahoma in years, perhaps over a decade.
Yeah, and I think there's something I meant to ask him about on that, and I need to get some quotes from him on this. Was his relationship with Gerald McCoy, because we've all seen it on Twitter. We've seen it. Like, there is a palpable relationship there. Like, it's real. And how much do you think that plays into things and all that type of stuff? I've been asked that so many times, and I can't quantify it, to be honest, because David, at the end of the day, is just really hard to read. And when people say that, I agree with them. Like, he's hard to read. But he also says some things to me sometimes where I'm like, he kind of tips his hat a little bit, just a little bit, to where it leaves you wondering if that's what's really on his mind. And people took that to heart, the Michigan State stuff, where he said it feels like a second home. Okay, folks. And Michigan State fans ran with that. Like, that meant that he was going to go to Michigan State and all that. I just have something to ask people when they go to that extreme. And I get they want to be hyped that he's visiting Michigan State still, but you also got to put it in context, bro. Like, Caden Durham and Michael Patterson McDonald both canceled their visits to Michigan State. Those are two of his best friends. Think about that. Like, when you think about that, wrap your head around that situation. And it just feels like it's a very pro-Oklahoma movement right now in his recruitment. Now, that could change. Like, we've seen this change so many times. And to go back to the Gerald McCoy talk, people also need to remember, does anybody remember how Gerald McCoy became a Sooner? Do they remember how long that took? That dude didn't announce until February. He didn't know. Nobody knew. And then on signing day, boom, he signed with Oklahoma. USC was after him. I want to say Miami and a couple other programs. Like, he was really high on at that point. So this is 5-star D-line territory recruitment and recruiting. Like, it's going to be a nail biter. Nothing's going to be, you can feel like it's going to be Oklahoma. You can feel like it's going to be Michigan State or Miami or Florida or whoever. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the day before he announces or right before he walks up at the podium and says, I'm going here, whether that's in July, whether that's in August, or hell, whether he waits till December. I tend to think he's going to announce in July or August. That's just the buzz I continue to hear. I've heard David at one point told me it was the first week of August. And then now that's kind of changed where you're starting to hear some buzz in July because Michael Patterson could be announcing in July. So there's a lot of back and forth here of what is going on there. But when you talk to people around Norman, they still feel really good. They feel confident about the situation. And each time he shows up on campus, that's just one more little feather in the cap for old Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis to continue to build that relationship. And there is nobody that has a relationship with David Stone the way those two do. Not even close.
Well, from one 5-star to another. Well, I guess this kid technically isn't a 5-star yet, but he'll be in that territory. The number one running back in the country, per the industry composite, Taylor Tatum, took an official visit to Oklahoma over the weekend.
Mhm.
There's been a ton of OU smoke there over the last 36 hours, and you started to see the predictions roll in this afternoon. Sam Spiegelman of On3 was kind of on the cutting edge of that, and Sam's one of the best in the game, but, Brandon, you and I talking about this over the course of the last day or two, we're very much content not to be first through the wall with the official predictions for a lot of reasons. One being that this is the number one running back in the
Yeah,
country
we talked
we're
about
talking
that
about.
extensively because we
And
almost did it yesterday, right? Like when we were both putting out our reports on it, and we were, and this isn't like pat on the back, we were ahead of everybody on that. But we both sit there and go, we're not putting in future guys. We are not going to be the first
a
one.
lot of that has to do with the crystal ball aggregation accounts and how much that amplifies everything to people
Yes.
who only follow recruiting on a very surface level. But needless to say, this has been moving in a very positive direction for Oklahoma over the last couple of days. And what's interesting about this situation, Brandon, is that, yes, we're talking about the number one running back in the country here, but what has really seemed to bring this thing home for Oklahoma is the baseball pitch. And to answer the inevitable question, we'll dig into that a little bit more in just a second, but to answer the inevitable question, the timeline is very much up in the air right now, and all of the predictions kind of play into that from what I've been told. Because of those predictions flying in en masse today, Tatum may see fit to let things cool off and die down a little bit before going public with his decision. But OU does have the edge here in a very decisive way over USC. And Skip Johnson and the baseball staff deserve a ton of credit here, Brandon, because this is not just, obviously credit to DeMarco Murray, Brent Venables, Jeff Lebby, everybody involved on the football end, but baseball, man. And we've talked about Taylor Tatum's love for baseball and the natural gifting that he has for the game. And Oklahoma sold that hard, and it's paid off.
Dude. Okay, so you know who I talked to, and like that was very much the vibe I got. Direct quote was, DeMarco Murray may be his dad's best friend or close to his dad's best friend, but Reggie Willits is Three's a company, bro. Three's a company. And they're three really close dudes when it comes to, obviously the father is kind of the centerfold of the whole relationship part, right? But when it comes to DeMarco Murray and that friendship with Tatum's dad, and now you have obviously Reggie Willits and his dad, and I'm told that they're super, super close. Reggie Willits has been a dude on this recruitment, and you can't underestimate or understate what Skip Johnson has done as well. Like baseball, like I'll just put it to this, and people may take offense to this, but Tatum loves baseball. Loves baseball.
We're not talking about a guy that just moonlights as a baseball player here.
No, he loves baseball. He's good at football. If anything, it's probably the other way around. He moonlights in football. And that's just something OU fans are going to have to wrap their head around. Because that's the way it is. If Oklahoma hadn't played for the national title the previous year, probably don't beat out USC for him.
Well, and do you beat out USC if you don't happen to have an alumnus and former MLB player who's on an MLB coaching staff and decides, nope, I want to go back to Fort Cobb, Oklahoma to my roots and help guide my kid through the recruitment process and eventually coach him in college?
And there you go. That's also a very big factor of it. And Reggie Willits being the associate head coach is at the University of Oklahoma is, again, just such a huge, huge plus for Oklahoma. There's nothing USC could do about that. There's nothing that the second they got into the baseball side of Oklahoma, it was, and we talked about that the previous week about how hard that was going to be to beat Oklahoma. And everybody wants to say it's USC prior to the visit. And we sat there and said, we'll wait. We're not going to put a pick in yet. we're going to wait because OU was that confident going into the visit that they thought they could make a push for him. And so, man, it's shocking, but yet it's not shocking at the same time, if that makes sense. I think it's shocking just how fast it swung. And then when I reported yesterday, 10 days out, and then you see on Twitter, he says, I'll announce in the next 10 days or so. And so that just is very much, you can tell that the OU side is very, very dialed in to this. Regardless of people's sources, or they're going to beat out everybody's source in Oklahoma or whatever like that. I've been sent screenshots of that a billion times. I think I'm talking about, Parker, but yes, the source meister.
It's always a bold strategy when you decide to diss members of your own network.
That was odd, man.
But,
That was one of the weirdest screenshots I've ever been sent.
To each his own. Everybody's got their own approach to the business.
Especially Josh Jim. Like, you just don't dish him. It's like, you just don't. Like, you knew the OU fans were going to come to his defense. Like, that was a dumb move.
Somebody in the chat says, why is Parker so good at getting people to eat crow? I appreciate that immensely. Mongo dropped $10 in the super chat and said, would you flip your future casts for Caden Durham if indeed Tatum commits to OU? Shout out to Nate Downs, who I guess is now the model OU dad.
Hey, man, Nate and I go way back. Same college, same time period. Good dude. Good dude. I don't know, man. Would you?
No, I would not.
I wouldn't either. I don't think so.
I know those two have a relationship, and I know what DeMarco Murray is going to tell those two in conjunction, which is the exact same thing that he told to Caleb Hicks and Dalen Smothers, and the exact same thing that he told to Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes, which is, I don't want either of you guys to be workhorses at the collegiate level. I want to make sure that if you want to go play in the NFL 4 or 5 years from now, you got fresh legs. And so we're going to do the tandem thing. We're going to do running back by committee, and you're not going to have the entire weight of the backfield on your shoulders. And I remember the very early stages of Javante Barnes' recruitment when Oklahoma hadn't really made their surge yet. But that was the one thing that Javante Barnes actually loved about DeMarco Murray in Oklahoma, is he loved the pitch, the somewhat counterintuitive pitch that, hey, we don't want you doing it all in the backfield. We want to bring in somebody else to make sure that you're not getting overworked. And so he throws Xavier Robinson into the mix. Oklahoma's always been willing to work him in as a third running back in the class, if that's what it comes to. I feel very strongly that, especially with Stone and Patterson McDonald and X all trending to OU as things stand, Caden Durham's not going to be the one to go his own way. Also, you take a look at, for instance, his UTSA official visit last week. To me, that just screams the process is coming to an end soon for me, and I'm just trying to make the most of it while I still can. So,
right.
I do believe, I'm pretty sure, like, honestly, I remember putting out my very first 2024 class prediction at the beginning of May. And at that point, I was like, look, I don't expect a hit rate of more than 65%. But I did have Tatum, Durham, and X all mocked into Oklahoma's 2024 class. And Tatum at the time was a little bit of a shot in the dark because he and OU were still kind of just starting to heat up. But man, as things stand right now, a month and a half later, Oklahoma looks to be on the precipice of closing out commitments from all three of those guys. And what a dream class that is for DeMarco Murray and OU. That's obviously, it's too far to project what those guys do at the collegiate level. But on paper, that might be the best running back class of the modern era for OU.
Oh, no, I would have to agree. I don't know. Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon's class was pretty spectacular. So those two alone, I mean, it's just, they were both highly ranked and both really good running backs. So, and I feel like there was a third one in that class, but I could be wrong. Oh, no. No. In the modern, it's not. go back to, I believe, 2004, and I believe Adrian Peterson. I want to say, gosh, who's the one that transferred to Georgia Tech?
Hishard Choice.
I think Choice. Now I could be wrong on that. I could be a year or two off here.
The one that comes to mind for me would be the class of 2006, because that had DeMarco, Moses Madu, and Alan Patrick from the JUCO circuit.
No, that's great. But Alan Patrick came in as a strong safety.
He did come in as a safety. Yeah. Yes.
So, but no, so you had Choice, you had Adrian Peterson, and you had the kid from Lawton that ended up playing corner after a couple of years, number 25. I just went blank, and he was a good corner at OU.
That's too far back. I don't know.
He was a really good corner at OU. I'm drawing a blank now, but
let's get to this this other super chat before we get to some of the questions in the regular chat. Blake Wilson wants to know, or rather he says, what's up, guys? Saw the interview with David Stone, Brandon. Also, I don't know if this is a rumor, but I heard that a 5-star prospect is trying to get Stone to go to OU.
A 5-star prospect is trying to get Stone to go to OU. I mean, are you saying like another 2024 5-star prospect is trying to get Stone to go to OU? To me, that would be, I don't even want to hint who that could be, but you just got to just decipher who that could be, I guess. Who is a guy that OU feels fairly confident in that's a 5-star? Parker knows.
Well, I mean, there's really it's just those two. It's those two. Terry Bussey as well, I guess, is a 5-star in the eyes of a couple of services. But I will say this. OU made a legit move with Terry Bussey over the weekend, and you got the chance to catch up with him, Brandon. I talked to a couple sources very close to Bussey. He's not just spewing empty praise for Oklahoma.
No, he's not.
Did make a big surge there. Now, is it going to be enough to outdo Texas A&M and LSU and potentially Texas as well? I don't know. I think it's too early to say that, but OU definitely has a better shot at that superb athlete out of Timpson, Texas than they did before the official visit. Also love that Mongo said in the chat, Nesta and Tatum could get us back on Rocco's whiteboard. That's a niche joke for those of you that made it up to Omaha last June. But I guess that brings us to the commitments. And they happened within seconds of each other last night. Brandon, James Nesta, the 4-star linebacker out of the state of North Carolina, and then Dozie Ezekama, the 3-star wide receiver from All Saints Episcopal in Fort Worth, literally announced at virtually the same time, the 7th and 8th commitments of the class for OU, respectively. Nesta, we anticipated as far as the timeline. Got the sense that Ezekama was going to be a Sooner, but he really caught everybody off guard when he put out the video while still on his official visit.
Yeah, that was the key, because I sent you a text that I got right in the middle of his visit, and I was like, because we were trying to figure out why we were being sent that, but we figured it out afterwards. Because very self-explanatory at that point. And because it was sent, I got sent a text with Ezekama's, how do I describe this? He was in and around Norman, and the eyeballs were with it, and we were trying to figure out but that was all that was sent. We were like, okay, like he's on campus, awesome. Like we didn't think anything of it, and then bam. Like literally, what was it? 3 hours later, he announced. So that was bad detective work on our part. Horrible detective work, just to be honest. Like that wasn't our finest hour. By the way, people are naming it was DJ Wolf. By the way, the other running back,
DJ Wolf. There you go.
That was a really damn good class, dude. And now we have the other 5 stars. We didn't even think of McKinley, and obviously Devon Mitchell was on campus as well.
Yeah.
So
you want to talk about
a host of them.
You want to talk about an emerging storyline with regard to this 2024 class. Remember, one of the things that we talked about down the stretch in 2023, or rather the 2023 cycle for Oklahoma, was the geographic diversity of the members of that class, from Josiah
Right.
Wagner and Heath Ozida from Washington, Logan Howland from New Jersey, Cade McIntyre from Nebraska, Phil Picciotti from Pennsylvania, so on and so forth. You're kind of starting to see a trend in the same direction in the class of 2024, with Oklahoma adding James Nesta from North Carolina, already having picked up KJ Daniels from Louisiana, and Wyatt Gilmore, the 4-star edge rusher from the state of Minnesota, is another guy that you and I have entered future casts in favor of Oklahoma for. Throw in 4-star offensive tackle Grant Brix. A lot of states represented, or have the potential to be represented here in Oklahoma's class, that you're not used to seeing Oklahoma mine talent from.
Yeah, so that I think that's probably the more interesting part of Brent Venables, the way he just recruits. And it may be more because obviously the state of Oklahoma in 2024 isn't hugely loaded, right, with top tier talent. But again, I talked to somebody again today, and they said, look, 25, 26, and potentially 27 don't even really have to leave the state for at least half the class. Like literally could be from the state of Oklahoma. And as OK Preps continues to grow very quickly, mind you, like this is a golden era of OK Preps that's going on right now. Like it is a golden era of OK Preps. And as a former OK Preps guy, I love it. It's like it's amazing. But Venables likes to start centric, right? Dallas, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, that area, Wichita, kind of Kansas City. I would say those 4 areas and regions are what he would probably call home base, and then sprawl out and try to find some guys. So they cherry pick, and they cherry pick really well nationally, and they don't try to overextend themselves. And I think that's what's made them so successful when it comes to national guys, like in Washington, in Iowa, in North Carolina, like, and obviously they have a strong probably presence in North Carolina, considering they were at Clemson for a decade, but still you're at Oklahoma now, and to still be able to go into those states and just cherry pick guys that you need. Florida is always going to kind of be centric because Oklahoma gets so many guys out of Florida. And I would probably say the same for California, right? Like you'd have to, right? Like California is another state that they are notoriously good at, and Nevada. But when you get away from those states, man, and to see all these, what was it? Did you say there was 11 different states last year, right? That was representative in 2020. I
The
think
final
it was
tally was something like 11 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, right? So it's a really smart play on Venables, like focus on your home territory and then cherry pick well. Don't waste your time on guys that you can't get. And I think that's something that they're really good at.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I love these kinds of instances because it makes you think. And it makes me wonder, because I have no idea what the answer is, but when was the last time Oklahoma got a kid from Minnesota?
Yeah, that's
to
crazy,
commit?
dude.
When
Yeah.
was the last time Oklahoma got a native Iowan on the roster? And so if you get Gilmore and Brix, I mean,
There
I
was a
still don't
running
know the answer.
back. There
What's
was
that
a
now?
running back in like 2006, 2007. Little white guy, Brandon something, that was really good at Iowa, transferred to Oklahoma, and then just kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Interesting.
That's the last one I can remember.
Let's get to another question from the super chat. By the way, C. Romine in the super chat says, if he's here, shout out Ricardo LeBlanc. He's a real one. Yes, he is. Will always be. His Twitter handle is at OUDNA LeBlanc, folks. Come on. Give it up to Ricardo. Seth Ammerman says, who is a top 150 kid that we get that nobody is talking about?
Is Zena Umeozulu a 150 guy?
Per the Rivals rankings, at least, yes, he is. Okay. And I think you and I would kind of be of one mind on that one. That's the name that jumps to mind most easily.
people keep talking about him to us and like, hey, you need to watch for this. You need to watch for this. He really likes Oklahoma. There is buzz with some of the commits and some of the other targets that he has been saying some very positive things about him in Oklahoma at this point. It's kind of odd, right? Because you don't expect a guy to play against their brother or potentially play against their brother in the Red River rivalry. Aiken to Eli Bowen, obviously, when it comes to Peyton Bowen. But yet, it's a real possibility with Umeozulu. So it's crazy.
Back to the chat here. Kason Holsey says, Brandon or Parker, please rap the Malcolm Kelly freestyle in honor of Tatum being from Longview. Oh gosh, I couldn't rip that off the top of my head.
I could do some of it, but I probably would just be talking BS by the time I got through like the first verse. So I'm good.
By the way, Skip Johnson just tweeted "looky here," as many of you are pointing out in the chat. So that's.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, put two and two together. Who else could that be in reference to at this point on the calendar? So, yeah, that's a good sign. We're about halfway home here on this installment of the OU Insider live stream. Want to remind you that we're brought to you by Olipop. Check them out at drinkolipop.com and use promo code ChampU20 for 20% off, or pick up a can, the flavorful, delicious, fizzy, sweet soda you're used to, but of a healthy variety in 14 classic flavors at your local Walmart, Target, Sprouts, or Whole Foods. Very pleased to partner with Olipop as the title sponsor of OU Insider Live. Now, a lot of you have mentioned.
I'm checking.
As I figured you would be. A lot of you have mentioned that Grant Brix picked up a crystal ball to Kansas State today. And one of my good friends from our time working together on the 24/7 network is Ryan Wallace. And we've been in touch about the Brix recruitment going back months and months. Kansas State was the very first offer that Brix ever picked up. Now, Ryan admitted of his own volition that the pick for Kansas State was rooted in two things. One, his gut, which I'll give him credit. Ryan's got a really good gut, and the girlfriend theory. Grant Brix has a girlfriend that's going to Kansas State this fall. So it's the mantra we always come back to. Girlfriends are undefeated. So Oklahoma is going toe-to-toe with the girlfriend factor here. Now, that said, I checked with sources in and around the Switzer Center as recently as last night on Brix, and the Sooners still feel they are in very good position there and believe that they've sold the family on the fit in Norman and believe that they've sold Brix on being a part of the culture and being really a hand in glove fit for the culture. And that's why I've continually touted Brix going back to January, February as a sleeper member of this class for Oklahoma, is because he's just such a perfect fit for the type of athlete that Oklahoma tends to recruit, the type of person that Oklahoma tends to recruit. Everything about the OU culture under Brent Venables, Grant Brix just fits. And so it is admittedly hard to imagine a kid choosing Kansas State over Oklahoma, especially an offensive lineman, given Bill Bedenbaugh's track record of development. But Kansas State's a real player here. Nebraska's a real player here. In the end, what also can't be understated is the fact that Brix is a little different. And he's a small town kid that kind of grew up in the Midwest bubble. And so he doesn't see things the way that a lot of other folks might see things. He's not as swayed by the prestige factor as your typical recruit might be, just because he's very much the type that is just looking to feel at home somewhere. At home somewhere outside his little town of 1,500 people in Northwest Iowa. So all that to say, I still believe Oklahoma is going to be the pick at this time. He is on an official visit to Alabama right now for a variety of reasons. I'm not worried about Alabama in that recruitment. I think it comes down to OU, K-State, and Nebraska. His final OV will be to Nebraska this weekend, and I would expect that we get a decision not too long thereafter. I'm riding with Oklahoma here until I have legitimate reason to believe otherwise. So I would say take the Kansas State buzz with a grain of salt right now and understand that all in all, Oklahoma has the strongest odds right now for that kid.
But girlfriends are undefeated.
Girlfriends are undefeated. I acknowledge that. And so if you want to boil this recruitment down to the most basic guiding principles of recruiting, well, then it's hard not to like Kansas State. But again, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than this. And a lot of the factors that would influence Brix's recruitment, if he were a typical kid from a, Dallas, Houston, KC, LA type of metro, like stuff just doesn't resonate the same. The traditional principles of recruiting and everything that we regard as orthodox don't necessarily apply when you're talking about a farmer strong kid from a town of scarce more than 1,000 people.
So not change the subject, but it is not Tatum, but it is a really big name transfer. And I'll just leave it at that for the baseball program and the looky here. So not to rain on anybody's parade or anything like that. I don't want you all getting up in arms over something that you guys may think it is and it's not. So right now it is not. I was told it was of very much importance to the baseball program though.
Jason in the chat said Parker talks about Brix like he's Trent Williams. Look, I'll say this much. I'm not trying to compare him to Trent Williams by any means. Obviously, that's very high praise, but go watch Grant Brix's film and tell me you don't see some shades of Trent Williams in the way that he plays the game. And by that I mean he moves, he runs, he pulls, he lead blocks with A, tremendous foot speed for a guy of that size, and B, just the I think what marks Trent Williams' play and what's made him a first ballot Hall of Famer in the NFL at this point is that, man, every single snap, it's like he's trying to make an imprint into the ground with somebody's body. And you see a lot of those same traits in Grant Brix. I firmly believe that this is the highest ceiling offensive tackle in the entire 2024 class if he's developed properly. And I think a lot of that is because, again, talk about you think about the training regimens that so many elite football prospects go through these days. Grant Brix has been subject to none of that. None of it. He and his family raise cows. That's what they do. So you get him in a strength program, you get him doing collegiate workouts in Schmitty's weight room, and you're able to pack muscle on him and refine his body to give you the frame that you want a kid like that to have. Man, he just becomes even scarier, and he's already scary, as raw as he is.
Yeah. So, wow. Guy's a really good player that they got. Said he could be a top 5 round draft pick when it's all said and done. So good for the baseball program, man. And Skip Johnson, they're killing it. But on Brix, man, I'm going to tell you right here that Oklahoma people I talk to say he's like a semi trying to go over a micro machine when he's out there on the road. Like that is the exact analogy I was given by a couple of guys. They love him. They think he just has a chance to be that dude on the offensive line for them. So he would be a good get. I think this Kansas State, is it this weekend, right? He's going there this weekend.
So he was at Kansas State this past weekend.
Okay,
It's
right.
Alabama right now,
Yeah,
Wednesday through
Alabama's right now.
Friday,
Yep.
and then Nebraska Friday through Sunday.
Is Alabama anything to worry about with him?
I
Not
don't.
Alabama, but Nebraska. Excuse me. I know Alabama's not.
So I think for that kid, and this is a gut feeling of mine, because look, I'm a Midwest kid just like him, and I didn't grow up in a small town like he did, but I think when you get to know the kid like I have, what does make you worry a little bit about Nebraska is the fact that if he gets to the end of the process and decides, you know what, I don't want to be that far from everything I've ever known. Nebraska is the school that makes a lot of sense. And his mom she would prefer to keep him a little bit closer. I know that much. Now, well, never mind. I won't say that. But it basically, before Grant Brix started going through the recruiting process, he had hardly ever traveled. I remember sitting down with him for the first time, being like, so like, you've gotten to see a lot of these programs, and getting ready to go see a bunch more. He was already planning trips to Tennessee and Penn State and Michigan State and all these schools. And I was like, yeah, is there any particular area of the country where you spent a lot of time growing up? And he's like, no, I mean, we just stay local for the most part. I've been to Minnesota a couple times.
Wow.
I was like, oh, so this is a kid that, again, he's very much stayed within his bubble growing up. And
Can we acknowledge you haven't froze, by the way?
Well, there you go. Now you jinxed it. Now it'll
Sorry.
happen in the next 10, 15 minutes
Sorry.
before we get off air. But Nebraska's an hour away from home for him. So
Oof.
if at the end of it all, he's like, no, I like Logan, Iowa. I don't want to go that far away from it. I want to be able to drive home and have a home cooked meal on the weekends. Nebraska is the school that makes sense. But all in all, OU, based on all the intel right now, has the edge for Brix. And I think that's a lead that's going to hold right now. I'm not worried about Alabama for a variety of reasons, but proximity being the primary one.
So everybody's talking about Joseph Jonah-Ajonye in the chat. And no. I want to say something here. So we both put in picks, I think, for Georgia, right? Have you done it yet?
I have. Okay,
I did too. That said, I talked to somebody today and I was like, yeah, he's gonna, and they're like, no, I don't know about that. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, apparently Oklahoma has made this one kind of interesting. It went from, and this person was so adamant that he was going to Georgia prior to the ChampU barbecue that now they're like, I really don't know, man. Like, he's really talking up Oklahoma. And like, I was like, what is going on? Like, I just put a pick in off of everything I was told shortly after the ChampU barbecue, but that was like the second person that kind of told me, I would slow down a little bit. Now, I think he's going to end up going to Georgia no matter what. But I don't think Oklahoma 100% believes that right now. And that is very odd to me. And I don't want fans to get their hopes up, because I'm sitting here telling you there's a reason why I put my pick in for Georgia. But I want to come back to this if something does happen and sit here and say, okay, that person was right. We probably should have listened to him, but I'm documenting it right now, basically on air. So, but I wouldn't get my hopes up if I'm an Oklahoma fan. I think the dude's going to Georgia.
Speaking of going to Georgia, how about Williams Nwaneri? Because that's really riled up the fan base over the last 24 hours or so. The revelation that he intends to be back in Athens for an unofficial visit this weekend. I just want to assuage everyone's concerns here. Well, not entirely, because look, they're the back-to-back national champions. Obviously, he loops back around for an unofficial this quickly after an official. There's reason for apprehension, but this was not the type of deal where he planned out this visit, where he intended to make this trip in order to see Georgia again. The deal is He worked with Missouri to move his official visit up a day, Thursday through Saturday now. He's got a brother that lives in the Atlanta area, an older brother, and that brother has a birthday. Will was going to fly down there to be part of the birthday festivities, and is going to fly in on Saturday, fly back on Monday. I guess the Georgia staff caught wind of that, and they said, hey, you know what? While you're down here, just make the drive out, come on by Athens again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told a lot of things yesterday about this situation by people close to that recruitment. And I think the underlying reality is that what you have to worry about, if anything, is that Nwaneri would be taking that visit alone. He's not going to have his circle with him, not going to have a lot of the people present that have been present throughout the process. And so Georgia, being the notoriously aggressive staff that they are, might throw a few things at Nwaneri, or try to or say some things, try to get him to say some things that maybe they wouldn't press as hard if he had the people around him present. But at the end of the day, I think Nwaneri knows better that, like, even if Georgia got him to the point over the weekend, I doubt this would happen anyway, but even if Georgia got him to the point over the weekend where he was like, yeah, I'm ready to commit to the University of Georgia, I don't know that the people involved in his recruitment and within his circle would allow that to happen until he came back home and thought things through from every possible angle to make sure that this decision was the right one. And also, I've said it from the get-go with this kid. Well, I've said two things from the get-go. One, this was never a recruitment that you were going to win easily, and that obviously hasn't changed. But two, proximity and relationships are two things that matter to this kid. And that's why Oklahoma has kind of always been where my chips have lain throughout this process. Doesn't feel like Tennessee made quite the impression they were hoping to make this last weekend. I don't regard Missouri as a primary contender right now. This, to me, down the stretch, is shaping up to be more of an OU Georgia battle than an OU Tennessee battle. And then, of course, you have that looming Oregon visit at the end of September that could throw a wrench in all of the calculus. But all that to say, I'm not really concerned about the Georgia visit this weekend for Nwaneri, at least not in an immediate sense. And I also do want to emphasize, he's not going down for the primary purpose of taking this visit. He's going down for the primary purpose of visiting his brother. And the source
people
I
are
talked
just going to Anthony Evans.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the source I talked to, trust me, they're well aware of the narratives that can run wild on message boards whenever the explanation is something along those lines.
A source on the OU side of things told me about the Williams Nwaneri stuff, the 5-star defensive lineman. What I was told essentially was, yeah, they're a good team. They won 2 national titles, all that. And that person also went on to say, look, he's going down for a birthday. So obviously Oklahoma knows about it. Number 2, just something that I guess you would have to put into the shocking category was how uncaring these couple of sources felt about the situation. As Parker duly noted, was that the people on the Williams Nwaneri side of things, the head coach, all these type of people that are around him are very level-headed people. And normally when that type of visit or potential visit, because it may not happen, we don't know if it's going to happen or not, takes place, not only would the fans bedwet, but you would see people behind the scenes start doing the bedwetting. And that just shockingly was not the case in this situation, which in turn kind of gives you, if you're an Oklahoma fan, a little bit more confidence and probably puts you a little bit more at ease because, again, Parker, you can probably speak to this as well more than I can. Well, probably the same way I can is when that type of stuff happens, it's not just the fans that kind of freak out. Usually our phones are blowing up like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? Blah, blah. And there was none of that. None of that. Nope. I got a fist pound and a thumbs up Like, who cares? And then they call and like, dude, we don't care. I'm like, go have fun, bro. So again, that shows you the confidence and where this team is at right now and where the program's at. I think it's quite extraordinary, to be honest.
Who haven't we talked about from this ChampU barbecue weekend?
Are we live? Because I'm not seeing the chat, man.
We're live. We're live.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the chat in front of me here. So I guess amongst guys that we haven't touched on yet, Caden Massey was in for an official visit. Doesn't really seem like that one moved the needle a whole heck of a lot. I'd lean more to Nebraska there. Nebraska or Kansas State than I would Oklahoma as things stand. Daniel Cruz is a horn. I think that's kind of common knowledge at this point in time. Bennett Warren, there you go. That's a 4-star offensive lineman that Oklahoma did make some progress with at the ChampU barbecue. And I think it's noteworthy, Brandon, that Michigan is filling up fast. They've got 5 offensive line commits. And that right there would lend, like, I think if you're an Oklahoma fan tracking the Bennett Warren recruitment, you know that above all else, above anybody else, Michigan is the primary competition for Bennett Warren right now. It's OU and Michigan at the top, Texas A&M and Tennessee a step below.
Right.
And so if I would imagine that's going to be a crucial part of the pitch going forward from the Oklahoma side to Bennett Warren. They did make a strong impression on his official visit. Caden Green was his host. He's very impressed with Biedenbow, Venables, and the Soul Mission at Oklahoma. But if you're OU right now, and if you're Bill Biedenbow, I think what you're doing with Bennett Warren is you're emphasizing that kid that, dude, you can go be one of 6, one of a half dozen at Michigan, or you can come join forces with Isaiah Autry, and you can be our dudes here in the 2024 class at Oklahoma. And you don't have to just be another name to Sharon Moore in Michigan. You can come be the top-ranked offensive lineman in our class, the guy that everybody's excited and raving about, and you don't have to worry about getting lost in the shuffle.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think obviously you got Autry on board already, right? And you probably have a better pulse on the offensive line than I do, because I've been really kind of tunnel visioned on defensive backs, running backs, and D-line for the most part. And then I've hit up, wide receivers or whatnot. And we've kind of both had our strengths, one way or the other in this cycle when it comes to positions. And I've been wondering just as much as I think almost everybody else is like, hey, who's going to be in the class? Like, who is going to be in the class? And I think somebody asked me that in the chat today on OU Insider, the VIP chat. And I said, look, right now, my best guess is obviously Autry, Brix, Poe, and I believe I said easily and I said, dude, I'm not super confident in easily or Brix as I am obviously Autry or Poe. Like, I think those two kind of feel more along the lines of Oklahoma, and the other two kind of feel like they could go a variety of different places. And you can say that obviously for Bennett Warren. You can say that for a couple of other OU targets that's on the offensive line, and you wouldn't be wrong. And so this is one of those cycles, like 2022 and 23, you kind of knew who was going to be in the class, right? When it came to the offensive line, it was almost like a thing where you felt pretty confident in, certain guys. This is one of those classes where it's kind of flipped, where the defensive line, like, you feel fairly confident in who's going to be in the defensive line class. Not so much the offensive line class right now. And that's kind of a weird dichotomy, because we're not used to that, right? We're used to having more up in the air on the defensive side, more so than the offensive side. And I'm not saying that defensive line is more solidified. It's just you have a better feel, more confidence in certain things. And normally you would on top targets on the defensive line. And that's where it's different, just where it's different right now. Speaking of, we haven't talked about Dominic McKinley in his visit, and there's been multiple questions about Dominic McKinley in this. And before we get to that, I think, we talked about Ollie Pop earlier. We have to talk about, we're doing an OU Insider. We're giving away for free until August 10th, fall camp, all that type of stuff. We extended it because you guys have been so great. And so if you want to get on board with that, it will definitively end on Friday at 11 p.m. I asked and begged and Rivals, since you guys have been so responsive, talking about you Sooners fans signing up. And I think we've had like almost 400 new subs since we started doing that. So if you want to get on board right now with OU Insider, it's the time. Now's the time. You literally won't have to pay for a month and a half. You get it for free. That means all the commitments, all the lead up, and literally like the first week of fall camp for free. Now's the time. Party in the Palace, Sooners Under the Stars, all the commitments, fall camp starts up. Now's the time for free. And you can sign up for a year, or you can sign up month to month, whatever. You get it for free all the way to August 10th. So now's the time. All right. Speaking of Dominic McKinley, I talked to a source today and yesterday, and I talked to Dominic McKinley himself, to be honest with you, over the last few days. And what really stood out to his mom, Angie, and to everybody around him was the soul mission. And we say that all the time, like the soul mission, the soul mission, soul mission. But when you're talking about something like I've talked about this for months with Dominic McKinley about how faith-driven his family is and how Todd Bates and Chavis and Venables and all those guys resonate with them. They see it and they love it. They understand that program is a very faith-driven. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, you're Islam, or whatever. Oklahoma in general is a faith-driven, culture-driven pro football program, and his mother loved it to the point where going into it, Oklahoma felt like that team that was at the top, but that you were kind of leery still of LSU. And you still are, because LSU's right there, 50 miles away from his house, right? So you've always got to be leery. And the fact that he's not making a decision until the Under Armour game in January, okay, that's going to be a long, drawn-out recruitment. Oh, bummer, Parker. But still, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis have really done a fantastic job there. And McKinley said it. He goes, look, that was one of the best visits I've ever been on. And he's been on very, 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 he's been to Ohio State, I believe. I think he's been to A&M, right? So he's been on some very, very big visits. And to say that is one of the best visits I've been on, that's huge. That's huge for Oklahoma. And the Oklahoma side of things feels really, really good about it, but they're also not stupid. They also understand LSU's playing from behind, but they're still LSU. They didn't have a defensive line coach all through the winter, all through spring. So their new defensive line coach is literally trying to play catch up with Todd Bates and a couple other places. He's going to be at Texas, I believe, this weekend. And then things kind of slow down. And then it's down between Alabama and LSU to get the final visit for him. And where he could take both because of the new rule starting this season. So regardless, the fact that Oklahoma's doing what they're doing right now and they're getting all these 5-star defensive linemen on campus, that wasn't happening previously. Now they got to land them. And I think this is a year where you start. Obviously, they landed PJ Adebawore last year. I think this is a year where you get more than one. Would you agree with that, Parker?
I would agree. Yes.
Yep.
I think, with everything we've talked about in this 2024 cycle, assuming it comes to fruition for Oklahoma the way that we expect it to, or it doesn't even have to be an ideal world. Honestly, I think there are multiple paths, but yes, I agree.
No doubt. All right. We got Blake Wilson with the super chat. Thank you so much. So Robertson set his commitment date for June 27th. Correct. If you were on OU Insider, somebody asked me commitments, how many, all that. And I said through June 27th, I expect 3 or 4. You're at 2 right now. Think about the rest. So, okay. All right. So there you go. And that may be underestimating how many they could get by June 27th at this rate. So we'll see. I think they're in a really good spot for Robinson. I think they're in a really good spot for Taylor Tatum. I think they're in a really good spot for Gilmore. And then if you ask me by July 8th, I think they're going to be 6 or 7 by then.
Hello.
Would you agree with that?
I think it's on the optimistic side, but yeah, I think it's plausible.
No. I mean, okay, let's say Oklahoma lands some of these guys. Okay, Robinson. It's all hypothetical. Robinson, Gilmore, Samaj Jones, Denson. That's 4, right? You've already got Nesta, and you've already got Ezekama. All right, that's 6 right there.
Well, I didn't realize we were counting Nesta and Ezekama, but I mean, yeah, you throw in a potential announcement from Taylor Tatum, and yeah, you're encroaching on that territory.
And yeah, and that he doesn't obviously have a date. We're just throwing it out there, and then could easily be. Sorry, I had to do it. I've been waiting for a chance to do that for a while. Could easily be. I know you commit at some point. Now, obviously, you got to beat out his top. What is it? Alabama and Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Are the other 2? So I just thought it was weird Georgia wasn't in it.
I think a lot of people think that's weird, and
it kind of strikes
there might be some subterfuge going on.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, that could be one of those guys that could surprise people.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I think that's I think we've just about covered the gamut. I think that's as good a place as any to leave off. And we're going to podcast later this week. We'll have that out for folks. We'll deeper dive into some of the things we've already touched on. We'll rehash some of the same points. Obviously, by that point, hopefully we have a little bit more clarity on the Tatum situation and a couple of these other recruitments, Casey Poe. So be on the lookout for another Under the Visor podcast dropping soon.
Yes, do that, and make sure you subscribe to this channel, and make sure you take advantage of that free OU Insider if you go sign up right now, all the way to August 10th, fall camp. This is if you're a recruitnik, this is the best time to do it right now. Get involved. Some of the recruitments are going to last through the season, so you're not going to want to leave after that, but you will love it. I promise you. The board is fun. It's super busy, and it's growing. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drum. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe. You guys have a blessed day.